Hi, I'm Shira Carpel.
And I'm Shayna Gaunt, and we're board-certified behavior analysts. At How to ABA, we provide practical resources, community, and support to ABA professionals. In each episode of our podcast, we will be having real conversations with real people, sharing real stories about ABA.
We'll share relevant strategies and actionable tips that will make us all better ABA practitioners. It's the ABA content you need that you're not going to learn in a textbook. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today, we are speaking with Lisa Cvetnich, who is a BCBA who has been practicing in early childhood and special ed for the last 13 years. And she works mostly in an early intervention program, but also doing some parent training. And I'm really excited to hear more about that early intervention field, about how she works with parents, and just generally your experience in that area. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Welcome, Lisa. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So when we read over your profile, you were talking about early intervention and parent support. And that is so amazing and so fascinating because it's something I think as BCBAs and as educators, we all strive for. So, we educate our kiddos, but it really does mean nothing if they go home to chaos at night.
Right.
So tell me how you got into this field.
So after I did my undergrad, I live in Utah and I went to the University of Utah. I started working in a preschool program that focused with kids with emotional behavioral disorders and started working with some of their parents. And that really switched my focus to going into special ed. So I moved out to Nashville, Tennessee to go to Vanderbilt University, and I did my master's in early childhood special ed.
Me too.
Yeah. And at the time there, they had just started their ABA certification. And one of my advisors was like, hey, you should really stay and become a BCBA. Like, this is going to blow up in 10 years. This was back in 2005. And I was like, no, I'm just going to be a special ed teacher forever. Like, I'm just.
Do you even know what a BCBA was at that point?
I did. I wasn't quite sure how they fit in, what their role is, but I just knew I wanted to be a special ed preschool teacher. And so I got out of there in a couple of years, started in a special ed preschool classroom out in Nashville. And when I moved back here, they didn't have an opening in their special ed preschool, but they said, do you want to do early intervention instead? And I was like, well, I need a job. So that was 13 years ago, and I've been there ever since. And then in 2016, I think is when I went back and I did my ABA program, passed boards a couple of years ago, and here I am.
Hey, that BCBA thing. Oh yeah, I guess maybe it is a thing now.
And it always seemed so undoable now, right? Because I was working and I had a family and all those hours I had to do. And luckily I was able to count so many of my just early intervention hours during the week towards that. So that was actually the only way that it was doable at this point. So
how old are the kids that you work with?
So they're birth to 3.
So how does, typically when we think of ABA, we think of the kids who can go through some sort of, 4 hours a day of an ABA session, or they're going through drills, or they're learning things. Mm-hmm. Tell me how that applies to a kid who's 1 or 2.
Yeah. So once they're in our program, so once I'm out in their homes, which we've actually just been able to get back into their homes after COVID.
So great.
We really spend a lot of time in those first couple of visits seeing what they're able to do at their home, what are the challenges, where we can start, and really kind of speaking to the parents about, if they're having tantrums, if they're having biting, if they're screaming, if they're running away, that really kind of focusing in and helping parents realize that there's a reason for those behaviors. They're missing skills, how we kind of blend those two together of how do we teach them a new skill to still get their fruit snacks, or how do we work on their attention so they're playing with toys appropriately, transitioning between activities in the home, trying.
The parents have to be there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's
So we're a parent training model. So it's very different than like taking them to a speech clinic or even an ABA clinic. And then, the kid gets sent back home. And
that's incredible. How do parents get involved in this?
So a lot of times it's the pediatrician that recommends it. We get a lot of referrals from the pediatrician. Sometimes it's just word of mouth, or the parent has heard about our program another way and they call in. Then we do an intake. So we assess all areas of development. Our nurse does a health and hearing and vision screening to rule out any hearing or vision issues. And they qualify in Utah based on either their testing scores or a list of diagnoses that automatically qualify them.
So this is a free program?
In Utah, no. It's based on a sliding fee scale, unless they have Medicaid, and then that pays for it.
So I need to know, how do you get parents on board? I think that's one of what we hear is one of the biggest challenges for BCBAs is parents some of the times are on board and they're really gung-ho and learning about the strategies. And some of them like kind of come to us and say, you fix my kid. And what you do is what you do, and then send them back to me. And I don't want to know anything about what you do. How do you get parents to be on board?
Well, I think the first thing is they were the ones that called us. So they know something's going on. When they're so little, sometimes they don't know if it's autism or just general delay or kind of what it is, but they called us. And so they know something's not right, or I can't sleep because of, my kid's terrible sleep, or these behaviors are, ruining our days. So I think they have a buy-in from the beginning. I do have those parents where it seems like they want that person to come in and fix their kiddo. And so it's a lot of, education on our part on the front end of really telling them like, you're the one that's with your toddler or your 2-year-old all the time. And so, it's important that you know how to implement these strategies and that I'm giving you information and strategies that are going to work for you. And I think that's been a big thing that I've learned over the years, because I was always the one to, make really awesome picture schedules and choice boards and all these things that I thought the family should be doing. And then I would find them on the countertop or buried the next time I came. So I really had to figure out, what's going to work for the family. What do they want to do? What do they want to focus on? And what they feel comfortable doing. If they, really latch onto the first then board or, pictures or something. But like I said, a lot of it is they've called us. They know something's wrong. They want to fix it. So they're really struggling. So I think that gets at least my foot in the door. And then kind of educate them about, what, we can make this better. We can fix this. We can decrease those tantrums or get rid of the biting or, start toilet training, whatever it is.
I love that you said you really listen to the families and what they need. And, you're listening to what they want for their goals versus you just coming in and saying, well, here's a picture schedule. It's going to fix everything. Or here's what I think you need. What are you finding are the family's biggest needs, or what are they reporting to you?
A lot of times they just don't know where to start. So the good thing about being in early intervention is we are very family oriented. A lot of our families are also getting ABA services on the side. And I think from just a purely ABA services standpoint, the biggest need that I see, or the most feedback that I get from my parents, is that there aren't a ton of BCBAs and RBTs that can work with a 2-year-old, that kind of know how to work with them with, during playtime or mealtime, And so the parents aren't quite sure what's happening during these sessions. They're not sure what they're supposed to do during those sessions. The other big thing is just getting that evaluation and services started. There's, long waiting lists here, probably like everywhere else. And so there's just that need to have good services that can start in somewhat of a timely manner.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine it's like you said, it's so challenging from a parent's perspective, also from a practitioner, sometimes with us not knowing how to engage with a 2-year-old or where to start.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I get a lot of, I might see a kid who's just been diagnosed. They may be 2 or 3. Parents are like completely overwhelmed, right? The kid probably doesn't have any language, doesn't have a lot of skill, may have challenging behavior. Parents, are overwhelmed. Like I said, where do you even start? Like, how do you prioritize? Where do you go from there? What does that assessment process look like? Do you go by what the parents are most challenged by? I find that also when parents are like in a complete crisis mode, it makes it challenging to prioritize, because we know that a lot of challenging behavior, we want to teach them skills, right? We want to give them the skills to replace that. But parents aren't always interested in the skill acquisition. They just want that behavior to end. They want their kids sleeping through the night, or they want the tantrums to stop. So how do you prioritize that?
I know it's hard, because you walk into a home and you see like 100 things that you want to change right away. But part of going through the IFSP, or the Individualized Family Service Plan, with the family, I think really helps tease some of that out, because part of that is going through the family's concerns, their priorities, and their resources. So they may list out, 30 concerns, but when I kind of say, okay, what do you really want to focus on first? Do you really want your toddler out of your bed first? Or, do you want them eating new foods? Are you more worried about the tantrums and the head banging? Kind of find out, it would be awesome to get them out of my bed, but like these tantrums are wrecking our life. So let's fix that. So I think the IFSP really kind of helps us tease out some of those things. And then just, kind of having that conversation with them of saying, yeah, there's a lot, like, this is really hard. Let's get started with the tantrums. And then that's usually a good one that parents want to focus on. And then we can kind of build from there and kind of talk about how, once we get these tantrums under control, other things might improve too. They might be able to play with toys, or be near their baby brother, or sit at the table. So sometimes, focusing on that one thing can bleed into other areas.
Yeah, you're a mom as well, right? How's having your own kids influenced what you do?
Right. So I have a 13-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. My 13-year-old was diagnosed with ADHD when he was in 2nd grade. And so I've been the parent getting the testing results. I've been through the IEP meetings where I just sobbed the whole time. And so I think, being a mom of a kid with special needs has also given me a better understanding of what these families are going through on a whole. And that sometimes what I think is important, or what I want to focus on, is really not. Sometimes they're dealing with just getting through the day, or marriage issues, or, just anything else. So I think it's helped me realize that just because it's in a parenting book, or people say you should be doing this, or you should be focusing on this, it doesn't necessarily always mean that that's what the family can do right now. We, with my son, have gone through those times where it's like, we've had the behavior specialist and the special ed team saying we needed to do certain things, and it just didn't fit into what we were doing at that time, or to what I felt like my son could handle at that time. And so it's given me a good perspective of, you know what, if your kid has a pacifier a little bit longer than they should, that's okay. If you're okay with your toddler sleeping in your bed, that's fine. So just kind of really understanding both sides as a special ed teacher, but also as a mom of a child with special needs.
And no judgment, right? So,
Right.
you walk into someone's
100%.
home and it's, so what? If your kid wants to sleep with you for 2 years longer than they should, I'm not going to judge that. That's what
100%.
We've got other priorities here.
Yeah.
So what? This happens in your house? Whatever. I've seen it all.
I know.
Yeah.
All your kids have their own screens. Whatever.
Everyone has their own coping strategies, right?
I only became a BCBA once I had my 3 kids. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like now I know how to parent, right? Like I'm going to ABA the heck out of them. And of course I was given the kid that ABA doesn't work on. My oldest kid was like, fought back every strategy I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it really made me realize like my agenda doesn't really matter. Like as a BCBA and the ABA principles, they're great, but you have to be flexible. You have to do what's going to work, and you have to know your audience, whether it's your own children, whether it's the parents you're working with, and really adjusting to what their needs are, because there's no one thing that's going to work all the time. And so I love that having our own kids has really taught us that, which is a really important thing to then bring into our professions.
Well, and I know too, as a BCBA and special ed teacher, I have all the strategies. I know what to do. I know what will work. But at the end of the day, I come home and I'm supposed to do that with my own kid. Like, I don't like, it's just so much harder with your own kid. And so that I think gives me an understanding too of, giving these strategies and activities to parents and knowing that it looked really easy with that, special ed girl when she came in and did this, but it's hard for me, or, it's just not something that I can do at the end of the day. So
I had the opposite experience as Shira. So I was a BCBA before I had kids, and I would go into families' homes and say, well, just do this and just do this and just do this. It's easy. And I remember specifically around morning routine, right? So, okay, just morning routine, just set up your schedule, allow a little bit of extra time to have the kids put on their shoes, and you can practice all that and the dressing, and there you go. And then I had my own kid, and it was like, oh my God, mornings? This is crazy, right? So it definitely does offer you a different perspective on the way things are. So, we're not saying that you have to have kids to be an effective BCBA, but just being able to put yourself, if you don't have kids, being able to put yourself in that perspective of parents and how busy they are and how tired they are and how little time they do have to allocate to working with their own kids.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is one of the big benefits of early intervention, and something that I tell my parents is that, the strategies that we work on, you don't have to set aside a therapy time. Every kid is going to have a snack time or a bath time or a play time. So how can we use a routine or activity that you're already doing, and we just tweak it a little bit, or, hold up the fruit snack in front of your face so your kid looks at you and then give it to him. So, starting out small and helping families realize I don't have to set aside 2 hours a day to do this. My kid eats fruit snacks every day. Here's how we're going to, like I said, just tweak that a little bit. So we're working on a new skill, or making it a little bit harder for your kiddo, or make it a communication opportunity, have them sit in their high chair and then they get the fruit snack, whatever it is, but just make it really doable for the family so that it's just embedded into something that they're already doing.
I love that. It's definitely about incorporating this into the routine you're already doing and just tweaking it a little bit versus setting aside extra time to do extra things, to do extra. It almost feels like a brick on parents who can't do anymore at this point in time, right?
Right.
And for many years here where we are, I think ABA had that first model where it was like, I send my kid out and ABA happens as this extra therapeutic thing. And at least in my experience, and I think a lot of our experience, we're finding that like, then what? Like, where do kids go from there? They go home, they go to school, and nobody has those skills. And here they are working towards, this caregiver mediated model where caregivers are given those skills and those strategies. And I think that's huge because ABA doesn't have to be extra. It should be something that is happening all the time. Could you give us an idea of like what a typical, session might look like? Like how much of it is spent with parents? Do you engage with the child? Is there an RBT involved, or is it mostly you doing that work?
Yeah. So we don't have RBTs in our program. So in my job, I'm operating as a special ed teacher. So when I go in with the family, usually the home visit, once we've got the IFSP established, I'll go in, we'll kind of chat about what's happened since the last visit, what worked, what didn't work, any progress they've seen, new things they've been focusing on, and then really linking that to what we need to focus on for that day. So sometimes they're more worried about eating or play, or we're working on transitioning between activities or walking with mom. So it's really kind of guided by what the family wants to focus on right then. Sometimes it's carryover from the last time. We've been working on a couple of signs during snack time or playtime, and the kid's just kind of not getting it, or the mom feels frustrated. So we'll pull a couple of things that the kid really likes at that moment, and I'll kind of demonstrate and then have mom try. But again, it kind of just depends. And especially with this last year, sometimes there's nothing with the kid at all. The mom just needs to talk or needs to have a conversation with another adult, or is, just really worried. Most of this past year too, we've been on Zoom. So that's been challenging too, because, it was a lot of parent coaching and a lot of sort of more brainstorming. The 2-year-old was obviously not going to sit in a Zoom session with me. So a lot of it was kind of talking with the parent and saying what's happened since the last visit, what can we focus on now, and how are we going to do that before our next visit?
Yeah, there goes the behavioral service training model out the window, right? There's no modeling when you're on Zoom.
COVID wrecked all of it. Yeah.
Do as I say, not what I do.
Uh-huh.
Definitely. Now, you just started a website as well called the Autism Connection. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did. So about a year ago, I was talking to my husband, and I was sort of frustrated in what I was seeing with some of my early intervention families. They just felt like ABA services were really slow going, or they needed something else. And what I wanted to do was provide them with a resource, with this website that used simple behavior strategies for our toddlers, our 2-year-olds, and preschoolers that parents can easily do. They don't need to be a BCBA. They don't need to be a special ed teacher. They can just, read the blog, get the handout, and kind of know, oh, this is how I can use a first then board, or these are a couple of, things that I can change in my home that could, prevent some of these problem behaviors. Or, before we jump into strategies, I really need to figure out, why is my kid doing this? So what I really wanted to do was create a resource where parents of our young kids can just go and, read through the blog, get the articles, get the handouts, and really have something that they can do either in addition to early intervention and ABA, or while they're waiting for services. It's not just for parents of kids with autism. Cause I mean, you guys know, like these behavior strategies
They work for everyone.
Yeah. So, but there is such a huge need here in my area for ABA services. But like anywhere else, it's just a long wait. And sometimes, like I said, these parents don't feel like they're getting the parent training that they need to be able to help their kid at home. So I just wanted to provide something that was easy and accessible and that they could start doing today without any training or without going out and buying something.
And your website, theautismconnection.com, it looks really amazing. It's so clean. It's beautiful. But the blogs are very succinct, which is really nice. I love that in the blogs, you have a few simple steps of here's what you can do now, not blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. It's here. Do this, go. So it's really nice. It's put into really simple language that lots of people can read. We'll post that in our show notes for everybody who's listening. It's called theautismconnection.com, as well as we'll put in links to Instagram page and other social media links as well for the Autism Connection.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That sounds amazing. We're all about what's practical, and parents need that practical advice, especially with wait lists and resources being as limited as they are. So that's really important.
Lisa, do you have any favorite go-to ABA resources?
I was trying to think. So there's a few books that I always recommend to our parents. One is An Early Start for Your Child by Sally.
I love that
one.
Yeah. That is the one. I think I've probably bought like 10 copies because I keep giving them out to parents.
Party favors. Here, you get it. And you get it.
Here. But I love that book just because it does focus on those early skills. And it's like, here's how you do it. So it's, and it's written, in terms that parents can understand and just easy. But it really too explains like why we need to care about these social routines and imitation and attention. And so, I give that one out a lot. And there's a couple others. There's Autism Intervention Every Day. I cannot remember the authors of that, but it's another one that uses behavioral strategies and talks about environmental arrangement, function of the behavior, but geared towards our younger kids. I just finished Broccoli Boot Camp, which was written by 2 BCBAs. And that's one that I recommend to some of our families with picky eaters or problem feeders.
Broccoli Boot Camp. I'm going to have to look that up. I love that name.
I do too. And it was, like I said, it was written by 2 BCBAs, and they use, behavior strategies and chaining and shaping and modeling. And then I don't use this one too much with parents, but I really like the information in it. It was the Prevent, Teach, Reinforce for Families by Glenn Dunlap and Phil Strain. So that one's written more for providers of how to help families identify those problem behaviors, figure out the replacements, take the data, and just kind of take them through that process.
Wow. Awesome.
That sounds great. And if there was someone who is listening to this, who's a, newly minted BCBA, who's just starting their career, possibly in early intervention, is there any advice that you would give them?
I would say ask for help. As a new teacher, not so much as a new BCBA, because I did that in my late 30s and I kind of knew better. But as a new teacher, I felt that I had to do all the things and I had to know all the answers. And I would go home and cry because I felt like I was doing these kids a huge disservice. As a new BCBA, though, what I found is that ethical code is something you need to know. It came up with a situation in my school district not too long ago where I really had to be able to explain that to our director for a situation in which they wanted me to work with kids that I was not trained to work with. It was with older kids with autism. And I've I'm birth to 5, like through and through for the last 15 years. And so I really had to explain to her why I could not take this job, as a BCBA. Yes, you're trained, lifespan and across, all different groups, but I had no experience working with that group. And so it was really important that I was able to explain why I couldn't, and that was putting my certification in jeopardy and the school district. And so I would also suggest just knowing that.
Absolutely. So definitely asking for help. I mean, I think that's huge. And you don't know what you don't know until you get yourself into situations. And then you go, wow.
Right.
And it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means that you're actually stronger and you're confident in yourself because you can ask for help.
Well, and there's been a million times where I thought something was going to work and it totally didn't. And I would look at one of my classroom assistants and like, well, that didn't work out at all. And, being okay with that and knowing that, it worked with 20 other kids, but it didn't with this kid, and we'll figure something else out.
Yeah. And it's not about you at the end of the day. It's about the child. And is that child learning, right?
Yeah.
So, and then to your other point, absolutely knowing the code inside, outside, backwards, forwards. I mean, there's a reason why we've got that ethics, right?
Yes.
I always compare, working, in the field, but with a different population than I always compare it to something like an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, right? So an ear, nose, and throat surgeon can't do hand surgery, not trained, right? Always trying to compare it to that because people go, oh, that's what you mean. Well, I just thought a BCBA can do everything.
Yeah.
It's hard to stick to the code when you're getting pressure from either a school or a company to take the jobs and do the things that they think that we should be able to do. So I'm sure it took a lot to stand up to that and say, no, I know what my limits are. Being able to say no is sometimes harder than it seems. So.
Right. And I'm a brand new BCBA. I haven't, been doing this very long, and I had to go back through the code and read through it. I'm like, I cannot go in this classroom. And, like you said, being able to explain it to somebody who's not in the field and just thinks, well, you're the BCBA, so you can go work with this group of kids that really I'm not qualified for. And I was okay admitting that and not just, saying, well, I guess I can because this director wants me to, and I'm the BCBA in the district. And, it was probably one of the hardest situations, professionally that I've had to deal with.
But probably your director respected you more for doing that at the end of the day.
I don't know. She was pretty
well, you still have a job. Let's go there. You still have a job.
I'm like, just leave me in early intervention. That is my jam. I'm good in early intervention. I am 100% good there.
I don't know if too many people know this or not, but John Bailey actually has an ethics hotline. It's just abaethicshotline.com, and it's fantastic. I've used it before, and you just, you type in your question and he gets back to you. He himself typically gets back to you.
Exactly.
In less than 48 hours. And you're like,
I was like, John Bailey responded to my email.
Right?
It was amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So for all those hundreds of people that reach out to us asking about parent training and asking about how do I get parents on board? How do I work with them? Go check out Lisa's website at theautismconnection.com. Lisa, this was super informative and really helpful. So thank you for sharing your experiences and about early intervention. And there should be more out there. There should be more available for people who are working with those, 0 to 5-year-old kids, maybe a different type of setting, or working with parents working in the home. And so there isn't enough out there. So I appreciate you coming out and discussing it with us. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It was wonderful. Thanks so much, Lisa. Nice meeting you.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining today's conversation. Wherever you get your podcast, please go and subscribe, rate, and review so others can find out about us too.
For more from How to ABA, including free resources and ABA materials, visit our blog at howtoaba.com. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more practical tips and updates.